Well, happy Halloween. This is the second year where we've run this Inside Scoop webinar on Halloween, so it's becoming a bit of a spooky tradition now. I'm Jess Loveland. I'm head of new writing with BBC Writers and the drama commissioning team, and I'm delighted to welcome you all to this Inside Scoop webinar where we'll be chatting about our upcoming open call script submission window. We're going to be recording this webinar and we'll make it available later on our YouTube channel, just in case anybody wants to catch up or share it with writer friends. Closed captioning is available for those who would like to make use of it. You can just click on the CC button at the bottom of your screens. We have an hour today and we have quite a bit of ground to cover, so I'm going to do my best to keep things moving and limit my own rambling. We have three brilliant guests who I'll introduce you to shortly, and we'll also leave some time towards the end of the session for Q&A. So if you do have any questions, please pop them into the designated Q&A box, and we'll get around to answering as many of those as we can in the time that we've got left at the end. As I said, we're going to be covering quite a bit of ground in our chat today, so it might be worth just waiting a little while before posting your question, because sometimes we naturally answer quite a lot of people's questions throughout the conversation anyway. Also to note, for the past 2 years now, we've run online drop-in sessions during the application window. They're always a lot of fun, and we get good feedback from the writers who join us for those, telling us that they found them helpful. So we're going to be running more of those again this year. We have 5 sessions planned during the next open call window, and the first is taking place next Tuesday, the 7th of November, when the window first opens. Details of dates and how to join those and get involved are going to be available on the BBC Writers website. So if you have a question today that we don't get to, then please do consider jumping onto one of those drop-ins and asking it there, and we can have a chat about that. Anyway, that's enough rambling on from me for the time being. So I would like to introduce you now to our brilliant writer guests. We've got Amy Arnold, Ayad Andrews, and Fanula Kennedy. They're all alumni of BBC Writers programs, so they should have tons of insight about what it's really like for writers working with us. So I'm going to start first by asking the writers to briefly introduce themselves, tell us which of the programs they took part in, and give us a quick recap of their writing careers to date. So if I could start with you, Amy, starting alphabetically, is that okay?
Yeah, of course. Hi, so I'm Amy Arnold. I am a writer who's just coming to the end of BBC Drama Room. I did BBC Northern Voices last year and then kind of went on to Drama Room at the end of last year. So I'm, sort of very sad position now to be leaving that sort of chapter behind, which is scary but exciting. So I'm very, very new in my writing career. I've not, this has been the start of it, doing these writers programs, and I also work in development, so I'm a script editor, so I have some insight in the industry from that side. But as a writer, like I said, very green. I kind of got my first bit of paid writing work this year, so I'm hopefully when I came into the writers' room, was in a very similar position to a lot of you. So very, very new to the industry, and that's pretty much my journey so far. Yeah.
Thanks, Amy. Ayad.
Yeah, hi. So I was on the Drama Room program 2019-2020, and then now I'm just coming towards the end of pilot for 22-23. And so I'm just working at the moment on my script with the company I've been paired with, which is Dancing Ledge. And in the meantime, I've had a 6-part series with 5 Live and BBC Sounds. And I've done an episode of The Tales from Mallory Towers, which was a podcast series. Some other bits and pieces, stuff I've got sort of in development. So that's kind of where I'm at now.
Thanks, Ayad. And Finn.
Yeah, I'm Finn. I am from Belfast. I am primarily a playwright. I wrote my first play in 2010, which was based on my own experience of living in sheltered accommodation. And I then did Belfast Voices in 2017, 2018 to try and go into TV. And I thought it was going to be really easy, and it was really hard. And then I got into Drama Room, and now I'm developing my first play, Hostel, with Hat Trick and the BBC, in the middle of writing the pilot script.
Wonderful. Thank you. Thanks, guys. So before we get into the Q&A with our fantastic writers who you've just met there, you're going to have to listen to me a bit more, sorry. But I thought it might be helpful to just share a little extra detail about the open call, how it works, and what we're looking for, just that sort of thing. If you've made your way to this webinar today, then I'm sure you already know that open call is our big annual script submission window where we throw the doors open to BBC writers and encourage people to share their work with us. We'll be opening this year's call out next week on Tuesday, the 7th of November, and closing it on Tuesday, the 5th of December. We use the open call as a means of selecting participants for both our Drama Room Writer Development Programme and our UK-wide Voices groups. So all in all, we hope to be able to select just over 80 writers from across the length and breadth of the UK through the open call alone. And just to note, we're going to be renaming our Drama Room programme as Scripted from now on. So keep an eye out for that. We'll be reflecting that change on our website shortly. So hopefully that won't cause too much confusion. You can find out more about Drama Room, Scripted as it's going to be called, and the Voices Writer Development Groups on our website, including personal blogs from writers who have been through the programmes recently, including one from Amy. And you can find out information about the sorts of topics, speakers and conversations we have in those groups. It's important to say that we're looking for writers to develop rather than projects to commission or produce. So we're looking for writers who have an emerging voice. And by that, we mean writers who have already done some work thinking about the types of stories, the types of subjects that they want to talk about, types of stories they want to tell, and the type of writer that they want to be. So we're looking for fresh perspectives, compelling characters and relationships, intriguing worlds, problems and situations, and authentic and characterful dialogue. In most cases, writers who are successful in getting into one of our writer development programs, they've usually been applying to open call for a number of years, and they use it as a way to sort of keep themselves producing work each year and measuring their progress. We accept a range of scripts via open call, including theatre, film, radio, children's, online, and of course, TV drama and comedy drama. It's worth noting, though, that we don't accept pure narrative comedy scripts, sitcoms, or sketch show scripts, put my teeth in. If you're a writer who's interested in comedy, then do keep an eye out for BBC Comedy's Comedy Collective opportunity, which will be opening for applications early in the new year. A defining element of the open call reading process is the super competitive 10-page SIFT stage, where we prioritise reading the first 10 pages of every script we receive. Our advice to writers submitting is to make sure that those opening 10 pages are as strong as they possibly can be. Make sure you're introducing your key character or characters, the world they occupy, and give us an indication of the problem or the challenge they'll face as economically and dynamically as you can. I'd encourage everyone thinking of applying to have a read of the openings of some of the brilliant scripts that are available in our script library for some inspiration. So do check out our website for those. So I think that's enough from me. Let's have a chat with our writer guests. We can have a chat about their experience and their time with us during the groups that they were taking part in. Don't forget there's going to be time a bit later on for you to ask questions. So do have a think about anything you'd like to ask the writers and drop your questions into the Q&A box, and we'll get round to those shortly. So onto the Q&A. Amy, if I could start with you. You were part of Drama Room just this past year, and you've got your script delivery deadline today.
Yep,
So thank
will
you.
be it, I promise.
Well, I think you've got a valid excuse if you can't. Were there any sessions in particular that helped develop your skills and prepare you for the industry?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there were so many. It was really hard to try and think about which ones to sort of narrow down to. And obviously, I said going across both Northern Voices and Drama Room, you know, we got to meet a real variety of different people, from sort of agents to commissioning teams to writers who have worked in the industry for decades, like Jimmy McGovern, and you know, everybody had something really, really different to say, which was such a kind of, felt really fortunate to be in these rooms with these people that you would never normally get an opportunity to be in front of. So as I said, I work in the industry, so I did have from kind of other side of the table, I had some experience of what it was like to be a script editor and work in development, and so sort of some of the workings of that world. But kind of being a writer, it was mainly like these sessions really helped me to hone my craft and to try and sort of develop some of those more specific writing skills and thinking about my writing and kind of what kind of writer I wanted to be, which is something that I obviously don't do in my day-to-day job. I think the session that surprised me the most was one that we had with Andrew Burrell, who is an animator an animation writer for children's TV. He was head writer on Danger Mouse for and you know, I'm not sure for how long, but he was for a while the head writer on Danger Mouse, and he ran a workshop with us in one afternoon, which was, I think it was about 3.5 hours long. So it's no mean feat to make a Zoom session that's 3.5 hours long really fun, but we just did, like, completely, the time flew by. We had so much fun. We as a group developed an idea for Danger Mouse, for an episode of Danger Mouse, and we kind of got to sit together as a group and just fire off really mad ideas about, we had a crime fighting pigeon who was Danger Mouse's nemesis for that episode. I think kind of one of the key takeaways I took away from doing that session was that writing should be fun. Where I think so often kind of you can get really bogged down in the staring at a blank page for hours and trying to make something like come out of your brain. But to kind of have an opportunity to do something like that, which I had never really, I've never worked in children's TV. I've never kind of had any experience on that side of things. It was just really fun to get to spend some time just letting your brain go really mad, because that's kind of where we all come at this from, is that kind of desire to create something. And I think it's quite easy to forget that that's the bit that you really love about writing, is just coming up with really weird stuff, and it just letting your brain kind of go to all those strange places that you know, sometimes you can lose sight of that when you're really trying to like get your structure sorted. Saying that, we did also have some amazing sessions on which were more kind of tailored towards adult writing, or writing for adults rather. You know, we got to meet John York. We spent pretty much a whole day session with him, which was incredible. Just kind of going through his theories on structure. And I have to confess, when I first read Into the Woods, I found it quite, don't tell him I said this, but quite like didactic. And I'd sort of always struggled a little bit to kind of get on board with that idea of that theory. But getting the opportunity to speak with him and hear what he was saying about it was so fascinating, because I think he really opened up my understanding of the book and the understanding of that theory, and kind of how he applies it when he's looking at people's work and at stories, and how he engages with things. And it was just really useful. That was another really useful session. But I mean, like I said, almost everybody that we spoke to had some insight into the industry that I just I hadn't had before, and I found everything really valuable.
And do you think, because you're a script editor as well yourself, you work in development yourself, do you feel that maybe have the sessions helped you as a script editor as much as a writer? Have you taken things away?
Definitely, yeah, no, it really has. I think it's a weird thing to do both at the same time, and I think sometimes people very much want you to pick a lane. And I have, I can honestly say, I've found that doing both at the same time, each one has informed the other, and how I approach the other. Being able to work with a script editor as well, myself, on my own idea, has been really eye-opening, because getting to, I give a lot of notes. I don't often receive them, so kind of getting to analyze how I approach my notes as a writer, and how I sort of receive them, and what I can take away from that, and how I decipher what I want to do with the notes, has informed the way that I now sort of talk to other writers about their work, and how, what when I'm giving notes, I'm more aware of when I'm saying something that isn't useful, and when I'm saying something that actually is constructive and can be taken away and they can do something with it. So yeah, it's definitely been helpful when both sides of both have informed the other.
Had you worked with a script editor before on your own work?
Not in any formal capacity. Being kind of around people who work in development and other script editors, I've got script editor friends, so I've had ad hoc bits and bobs where people had read my work, and maybe in their spare time they'd managed to feed back a little bit, but never had anything sort of this dedicated, and this, the process of going through several drafts and being able to have people who are kind of fully invested in your script. I think it really makes a huge difference, because as I'm sure all of you know, it's quite frightening when you're sort of sitting, as I said, staring at a blank page, and the ideas in your head, but you're trying to get it out, and you can't quite work out whether something's good or something's bad, if something's working or why something's not working. And just having some people who buy into your characters and your world in the same way that you do, but can also help sometimes identify the problems that you are struggling to see yourself, because you're so close to the project. That's been really invaluable, because I know why, I'm part of that process on the other side, like I said. So I know the value of a script editor, or otherwise I wouldn't have a job. But to be able to have somebody doing that to me was really, really useful, because I hadn't had that experience before, and my script is so much better for it. I want to set my first draft on fire, because it was so terrible, but now I feel confident and happy handing something in, or I will this evening when it's finished. But so it's been really, really useful.
Thanks, Amy. So you were part of Drama Room, now called Scripted, and then you moved on to Pilot. How did progressing from between those two initiatives impact your development as a writer? And did you feel that progression better prepared you for the industry and for getting out into the world?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, I think getting into Drama Room felt like I was a competition winner. Like I'd kind of done something and won something, almost like it was a stroke of luck. But by the time I went through the process of being in Drama Room, the world of television felt a bit less impenetrable, and a bit more achievable, and a bit more of a sense of what that world looks like, and what different people within that world look for. And then, so that by the time I got to Pilot, I'd kind of felt like I kind of belonged now. Not completely, because I still have massive imposter syndrome all the time, but I kind of feel like I can get away with it a bit better than I might have done in Drama Room. Yeah, there's definitely a sense of more confidence that it gives you. I mean, I'd echo what Amy said, was that working with a script editor was really important for me in Drama Room. because I had an idea and then we worked that up together. And previously, it was just a case of me in my own head coming up with the idea and questioning it and deciding what was right and what wasn't right. But then once I had a script editor, there was somebody else you were having a conversation with about your ideas, and without necessarily telling you what to do, kind of suggesting other options and other ways for characters or scenarios to develop themselves. And I found that incredibly invaluable, and they were so smart. That's the one thing I've realized about script editors, is how smart they are about story and that kind of developing story and character. And that kind of hopefully rubs off on you after you've worked like that. You start to change your writing process, and that's happened more since I've got into pilot, and now I work with Dancing Ledge. And then we've spent a year working on a brand new idea. And that's been a fascinating process, really hard at times, because we kind of built from the ground up. Sort of started with character and then sort of built outwards from there. And that's not a way I would ordinarily work. So I found it quite an uncomfortable process to start with. So it's really challenged me to look at a different way to work. But both things I found I've got a lot more confidence in myself as a writer. And I'll say this as well, that one example of how I got that confidence was when I was in Drama Room. It was actually the year where we got into pandemic. So it was about the February, March time of 2020. And I had an idea for a series. And it was kind of a sporting event, but I wanted to do a docudrama version of it. So I just cold emailed the head of Radio 5 and said, look, I've got this idea. The anniversary of it is next year, so it's the perfect timing. I want to do it in the drama doc style, blah, 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 blah. And he came back and said, okay, that's really interesting. Let's put you together with a production company. Because of then pandemic hit, it took a long time before we got a green light, and then it finally happened. But after it did, the series went to air. We managed to win a bunch of awards with it. And I remember I went for a drink with my producer on the show afterwards. And I remember saying to him, why did you take a chance on me? Because I had no real track record in pulling something like that off, a series like that, or with that kind of level of work. I remember he said to me, well, we knew you were in writer's room, so we just assumed you knew what you were doing. So it was like a lovely way to go, oh, okay, so there's like the writer's room itself has a kind of level of kind of authority or kind of confidence within the industry itself. And I thought that was really lovely.
Oh, that's great to hear. And you touched there briefly on something that both you and Amy have been talking about, is confidence, and you mentioned imposter syndrome. And I'm just wondering how you deal with imposter syndrome, how you quieten that voice in your head, because I think everybody feels that to some extent. Even really experienced writers who have had lots of shows commissioned, they still talk about having imposter syndrome and that fear of being caught out and finally found out as being a fraud or something. It never seems to go away. So I just wondered if you had any tips for people who might be thinking about submitting, but having that sort of nagging voice in their head that, like, maybe wait till next year when really they should be just pressing send and getting their work out.
Is that for me, Jess? You're asking?
Well, for anybody who would like to take it, but if you've got some tips, I'd love to hear.
I would say fake it till you make it, really. Just act as if you know what you're doing. And as happened with me on the show that I just talked about, the story, Jess, of the shortened time I had to make that series. It was a crazy deadline. It was 13 weeks to write and research and write 6 episodes of 45-minute show per ep. It was crazy. And I'd never done anything like that before, but I did it because I had a deadline in front of me. And often I find that's what counts, is that all of a sudden you get a deadline and you don't have time to think about, can I do it? Can I not do it? Because you just have to go, I just have to do it. So often I just say, just finish whatever you're working on, just finish it and do it and just go through, because you probably surprise yourself actually at what you're capable of. and have the self-doubts, recognize them and go, and now I'm still going to do the work anyway.
Yeah. Sorry, just to add to that, because I think that's so true. And we had our final session sort of on Friday just gone, and we had a conversation. Well, we got to watch John York in conversation with Jesse Armstrong. And one of the things that he covered was his failures, which was really illuminating. And he was talking about kind of how you get through when when something hasn't gone your way. And I think kind of hearing him talk about acknowledging the fact that not everything that he does is like Midas touch. It's, there are some things that he's done that haven't worked out the way that he wanted them to. It was just good to sort of hear somebody talk about the fact that the self-doubt doesn't ever fully go away. There are always going to be things that you try that don't work and things that you try that really do. And kind of knowing that you're only, you can't know what is going to hit, what's going to land, what's not going to land. So you just have to kind of do what feels right to you. But yeah, just knowing that people like Jesse Armstrong, like the writer of Succession, the creator of Succession, still gets a bit of imposter syndrome, is, maybe that's a good thing, because you're like, oh, well, if he gets it, that's never going to go away. But then maybe that's a bad thing, because it's never going to go away.
I think it stops you being complacent. Maybe it keeps you sharp, because you're constantly sort of challenging your own ideas. So long as it doesn't paralyze you, it might, maybe it can be useful. Do you get it, Finn? Do you get imposter syndrome?
Oh, absolutely. And my imposter syndrome manifests itself in procrastination. So if I'm so afraid of doing something, I'll put it off. I'll clean my kitchen. I'll go out and do stuff, because I'm afraid of starting, because when I start, that's when I can fail. So just as I was saying, you have to fake it until you make it, and just sit down and do the work and give yourself the best chance. But we all get it.
Yeah, I think it's pretty much universal amongst writers, isn't it? And maybe people could use the open call deadline on the 5th of December as a means to challenge themselves and finish that script that they've got in their bottom drawer that they need to dust off. Great, thank you. And just thinking about the different groups, that one of the lovely things about the groups is they're made up of wonderful, incredible people, and everybody seems to have a WhatsApp group that's really lively and always pinging off messages. So Finn, I just wondered if you'd stayed in touch with some of the writers from the drama room that you were involved in last time, and sort of what do you gain from having that sort of peer network? What are the advantages?
I mean, it's just nice to have people who are all in the same boat as well. There's a camaraderie and a mutual kind of support. But yes, that was when on our first session, we had one of the previous writers who came, and they said, set up the group. And Rosanna from our group went round and got everybody's numbers, and she set it up, and we're still so active even now. So we stopped, last year. And I know the guys were messaging because they had done a couple of these sessions as well a few days ago. But it's just sharing opportunities, sharing advice. There's people, as Amy, you were saying, you worked with Paris on Coronation Street. People have different levels of experience, or they've experience in different parts of the TV world as well. So there's such a wealth of knowledge within it. And just that mutual support. And again, some of them are playwrights, so we've been going to see each other's work, and things like that. So yeah, no, it's really, really useful.
Great. Ayad, are you still in touch with?
Yeah, well, I mean, I'm still lucky, obviously, because I'm still in pilot, and that's exactly what Finn was saying. Actually, it's really useful that you can talk to others who are going through the same things that you are, and you can compare your experience. So if you're having an issue about, or you want to know what's a general meeting, what should I do, how should I behave, what about agents, who should I talk to? So can you recommend somebody, or what should I be doing with them? It's a really good way to kind of get insider advice with people who were roughly at the same point of the journey that you're at. So you can get a good sense really of where you are and how perhaps you can improve where you're at, and how to get a bit of insider knowledge on how to deal with the industry too, which it's hard to kind of get that information cold just off the internet. But when you're talking to people who are kind of living through it right then, and often meeting the same people you're about to meet or have met the same people, you can share those experiences. And that I found really invaluable, and I imagine will continue like that for quite a while, I hope.
Yeah. Amy, I imagine your group's a bit quiet today with the deadline looming, but is the Voices group that you were a part of previously, are they all still in touch and chatting?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, no, I mean, yeah, there's not been any communal breakdowns today, actually, which I'm surprised by. Maybe it'll all just happen later when everyone's submitted and then they're all doubting what they've sent in. But yeah, no, they both of those WhatsApp groups have been a massive source of comfort and shared wisdom, I think, from throughout both of the programs that I've been part of. And even on Friday, I saw there was quite a lot of our Northern Voices crew were sort of there, which was really lovely to see everybody and catch up. That we've all stayed in touch, and you know, as Finn was saying, everybody's at a slightly different stage, or they're doing something slightly different. Like I work for a production company, whereas other people work solely as writers, and they are, you know, I hope to be there one day, but I'm not. But you know, there's a lot of different experiences in that group, well, in both of those groups, and getting to see people kind of coming up through their careers at the same time as you and being able to support one another and kind of, you know, as I had said, share stories about that agent that you just met or that production company that you just met. It's such a small world, TV really is, and you kind of get to know that the more that you sort of immerse yourself in it. But it's just been, I'd never had that before. When I first started in Northern Voices, I never ever had a group of writers around me. I didn't know anybody who was a writer apart from the writers I worked with on Coronation Street, who are obviously all very established. I worked there as an editorial assistant. So kind of that was a real revelation to me, to get to know people who were sort of at a similar stage of their careers to me. Some of them a little bit more established, but others definitely very much coming up. You know, I don't have an agent, and a lot of people that are in those groups don't have agents. Some do. So we've just been able to kind of put all of that shared experience and shared knowledge into a pot, and there's always people who can give you advice on really specific situations that you wouldn't have necessarily had somebody to turn to otherwise. And we're just, good friends. It's just a really nice atmosphere. So I feel really lucky. That's been my favorite thing about being part of both of the schemes, is that community of writers that I feel like I'm a part of now, which I wasn't before.
Yeah, that's what the writers always say. It's the peer network, it's the friends and the peers that you develop, that's what you take away as much as what you learn. Yes. Finn, you started out in theatre. That's your writing background. So how did you find the process of sort of transitioning from writing plays to sort of writing TV specs? Was it difficult? What were the obstacles?
I found it so hard. So when I did Belfast Voices in 2018, I kind of went in thinking it was going to be really easy. I don't know why I thought it was going to be, I thought that, but and I also, just as I said, I left everything to the last minute. So they could clearly see every time I submitted, you know, a scene or something, they were like, "You did this last night." And I was like, "I know I did." I just couldn't. I felt like with theatre, you can do anything. And with TV, it's so structured. But funny, some people in our group said it was the opposite for them, and they just found theatre very difficult. So when I got drama room, I knew I had to kind of get the head down and do the work. And because it's so intensive, and you know, and you're reading scripts, as you said, Jess, I go on all the time to the script library on the BBC website and look at scripts just to kind of see the format as well. And getting the writing software was a massive thing as well. But story wise, it's similar, you know, in terms of structure. I am of the John York school of thinking of structure in the story. So story wise, it's not too different, but yeah, the format I found really hard. But you just have to do the work, watch TV and read scripts. And it
Yeah.
gets easier. I'm not saying it's easy now, I'm still struggling, but it gets easier.
That's it. That's great advice as well. I think reading lots of things and just seeing how experienced writers navigate all of that and the sort of visual storytelling as well. I think that's all really important, isn't it?
I'm watching TV. I didn't watch much TV as well, which is a mistake if you want to write for it. And then someone had said about watching, if you have the script, watching then what was produced is really helpful as well.
Yeah, just comparing the finished series with how it translates onto the page. Yeah, great advice. And the question for all of you, really, which opportunities have opened up for you since taking part on the schemes? Does anybody want to take that first?
I don't mind. I feel like I said, really very new to writing in terms of as a career path. Been writing a long time. I've applied for Writers' Room 5 times before I got on it, 4 times before I got my first interview, which was I crashed and burned, and then my 5th interview I finally got onto it. But one of the things that I sort of set out to do when I first started on Drama Room, because what we kind of laid out some goals that we wanted to achieve when we first got started a year ago. And one of the things that I wanted to do, which I felt at the time was a little bit pie in the sky, was to get my first bit of paid writing work. And I managed to achieve that this year because of this scheme. So one of the opportunities that arose through doing Drama Room was the opportunity to apply for The Verb, which is a Radio 3 program where you can apply, you submit a short script, 6 or 7 minutes long, short radio play, which the program sort of celebrates language. So that was the loose theme, was that we wanted to celebrate language. So I had never written for radio before. I thought I'd give it a go because, you know, you've got to grab all the opportunities you can. And my play was commissioned. So I was paid to write this short play, and it hasn't been on air yet, but it's been recorded, which was just a really, really cool experience. I've never actually heard. I'm not from theatre. I'm very much the opposite of Finn. So I had, I find that very like witchcrafty. I'm amazed by people who can write theatre, because I find it so impossible. So to do something like that was a real challenge. I know it's not the same as writing theatre, but it was a completely different medium for me. So I was really pleased to have put myself out there and actually kind of got that opportunity, because I don't think it's something that I probably would have done without this scheme. So and now I feel like I could write for radio. I feel like I understand it better, and I just to have the confidence, as I was saying before, just to try something that you wouldn't necessarily have gone for before. So yeah, but that was a big opportunity that's come out, and to be fair, I've literally finished today, so I'd say that's probably one big thing that I've done. Hopefully there's more.
Excellent, thanks, Amy. Does anything stand out for you?
Yeah, well, I mean, as I kind of said, that in Drama Room, I had the confidence to email the head of Radio 5 and got the series off, and purely that was just chutzpah on my part, not thinking the guy's going to take any notice of me at all. So, and then that sort of led to all kinds of other opportunities. I mean, I got my agent off the back of Pilot, and I got Mallory Towers' podcast series. Actually, that was during Drama Room, because part of Drama Room was we went up to Salford for the CBBC New Voices Children's Festival. And off the back of that, it was like a day of talks with producers and production companies. And off the back of that, there was a bunch of opportunities to pitch to different series and to send in an idea. And one of those was Tales from Mallory Towers. So I got that off the back of that. And then just got the script that I was working on in Drama Room was optioned by a production company. So there's lots of doors are ready to be opened if you're willing to go through them. You know, it's see the opportunity, but then go for it. I think that's key. I mean, we had the verb to in our year. I didn't get through. I wasn't chosen for the verb, but it shouldn't stop you. It shouldn't make you think, oh, I just can't do it. That's proof I can't do it because they didn't pick me. You just kind of have to go, no, because there's another opportunity out there waiting for you. You know, much like, you know, the schemes that we're talking about today. They're there for you, and they're there for everybody, really. And there isn't really anything stopping you but you. So don't stop yourself, I would say.
Don't get in your own way.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, don't talk yourself out of it for a reason that could be completely spurious and wrong.
So somebody in the audience I had asked what your radio show was called.
Oh, okay. So it was called The Fight of the Century, Arlie v. Fraser. And it was brilliant because we got Nars to do the voiceover for the show. So, and it was all over lockdown. So I didn't get to meet Nars. Nars was in the studio in LA. So I just got third-hand stories about, you know, writing for Nars. I mean, it was ridiculous that I was writing stuff for Nars.
Brilliant. And Finn?
Just as you were saying, I didn't get the verb either, but I did get the dumping ground shadow scheme, which I loved, and which was a real jumping in at the deep end because the script editor was brilliant. But we would kind of question notes, and he was like, guys, this is the real industry. We're going to eat you up, so you can't do this, you can't do that. Just like, it was just such a great insight, and he was so patient with us and so brilliant that then when we went on to do our spec script, I felt really ready for it. I also, in the agent session that we did, which all the drama rooms and voices were all invited to, we met agents, and I followed up, saw one that I liked, and I followed up, and she now represents me. And from that, then she set me up with loads of general meetings with different production companies, and I have a spec script that I got from the drama room to go in with that has opened up so many doors. That not that people want to produce this, but they go, okay, we see what kind of writer you are. Let's start a conversation. So it's been massive for me.
Oh, that's incredible. That's great. And I guess that's another example of not getting in your own way, is it? You saw an agent and you followed up, and
which was so not me. But what happened was that Hat Trick, the production company, had heard about my play Hostel back in 2018 when I was doing Belfast Voices, but I wasn't ready to chase that up. So then we met again after I had done Drama Room, and they were interested in it, and they said they can't work with me without an agent. So I found her and I went for her, and I talked over other people, which is again not me. I was like, I'm going to tell her everything on this Zoom to make her love me so that she represents me. So you do have to be pushy sometimes as well.
Absolutely. Yes, you've got to take the initiative, haven't you? And final question from me before we take some of the audience questions. Top tips on how to try and stand out amongst the thousands of submissions that come through the open call. Amy, will we start with you? Have you got any tips for how to?
I think it's a really kind of an obvious one in a sense, but to just write something for yourself. So write something that I think, you know, I'm really bad. I used to be really, really bad at I start writing something and I would get to a scene and I didn't know how to do it, so I would just stop and get in my own way. Now I'll put in a placeholder scene, you know, I'll just push through, I'll write the crap version and then go back to it. And I think that's the bit that I've learned to do now, which I think helps to make your script stand out, is to go back through, read those placeholder scenes where, or moments, you know, it might even be moments within a scene that you've written something that when you read it back, you're like, I know that's cliche. I know I've seen it before. I've just put in, basically, I've stolen something from somebody else's work and I've kind of repurposed it for my idea. And I think then just look at those moments and go, well, what's my version of that? Like, how can I make that feel like it was just written by me? It couldn't have been written by anybody else. And I think it's those moments where you can kind of make your script stand out and be different from just when somebody's reading something. Because as a reader, and I've read a lot of scripts, to read a script, and where you see something and you're just like, this is so familiar. I've read 100 scripts like this, or I've read 100 moments like this, or the way that they've done that particular reveal, I've seen that 1,000 times. And I think those moments, even if they feel small, are where you can kind of really make an impact, because you can do something that you go, oh, they're telling me some bit of information that I've seen other people get from A to B, the same A to the same B, but do it in a totally different way, which is something I try and do with my work now. But yeah.
Great advice. Thank you. Ayad, any tips?
Yeah, I kind of echo a little bit what Amy was saying there. And I think it's about kind of finding who you are in the work. So make the work personal, because your identity will come through in the script. And I get the feeling that there's a case of people want to see the writer in the work, rather than it's just, oh, this could have been written by anybody. It's a sense of, where are you in this script? And if you can find that personal connection somewhere, then I think that passion and that honesty, it sort of shines through. Even if I think the work isn't perfect, I think what people will read and be attuned to is a sense of, there's somebody here, that there is an identity, an author here. And I think that's what's really interesting, is that sense of, I couldn't have written this because there's a real personal angle here that's really interesting. And I think that's really what helps make a story stand out, what makes you stand out, really. So find a personal connection, I would say, and really lean into that.
Yeah, that's excellent advice. Thank you. And Finn?
Very similar. I was going to say, write what you know and not what you think they want. It's just that thing that makes the work authentic when you're writing from your own perspective, when it's personal, just as you were saying, Ayad. That really helps your voice to stand out, and that's hard as well when you do have self-doubt, where you think maybe your experiences or your voice isn't interesting or important. It really is. Put that in. And my second bit is, don't leave it to the last minute and do a first draft. Put your best foot forward. Do a draft, read back, take a break, go back to it, and give yourself the best chance.
Great. Yeah, that's really interesting, because last year when we did this same webinar, we interviewed one of our writers, Daniel Rusto, and he said, and I wrote it down and highlighted it, that writers are always sort of second guessing themselves and their work generally. And he said, you're more interesting than you think you are. And I thought that was really, really interesting, tell a story. You tell a story in such a way that only you can tell it. You've got your own perspective, your own lens on things, and the more you can bring that to it, the more I think it will stand out and feel authentically you on the page. Great, thank you. Well, we've got lots and lots of questions coming in now from the audience. So I've got one here that says, question for the writers. Would love to know what they think the selection team saw in their scripts that were submitted initially, and how did they choose what they were going to submit and when? As in, how did they know they were ready? Does anybody have any thoughts about that? Are you too close to it to possibly know what?
I don't know if I could speak to exactly what they saw. In terms of being ready, I think, like, as we've said, I don't think you necessarily are ever like fully ready to share your work, because as writers, I think we're just inherently a little bit like, oh, I don't want the rejection. But it's so important to put yourself out there and to be persistent, because most people who get onto this program don't get onto it on their first application. So I think it is there, there's no take time, as Finn said, to make sure that your script is in a really good place and that you feel like you've worked hard on it, but also take the plunge, just do it. Like, don't sit on the script that you've worked on for months and go, I'm just going to hold on to it for a bit longer, because I think you can do that forever, and actually you need to just sometimes go, I'm going to just put it out there, even if it means that you don't get on that time, you know. And but yeah, and I really don't know what I could say about what people saw in my script. I just try, you know, as we've said, tried to make sure that I was writing something that really interested me, and that I wanted to that I wanted to do the research because I was really intrigued by it, and there were things in there that I was like, oh, I really want to know more about this, and sort of hinging it on the fact that if I wanted to know more, then hopefully somebody else would want to know more, and that they would be interested in the way I told that story. But yeah, I think submit, just if you've got a script that you feel like it's there, just go for it.
Yeah, and I'd say following on from what Amy just said, you know, I think I'd read it somewhere or heard it. Someone said, you know, scripts aren't finished; they're just abandoned. You know, at a certain point, you have to go, enough already. You know, stop researching. You know, stop tweaking and finessing. Just at a certain point, you have to just let it go and see what response you get. As to why my piece was chosen, I mean, I'm British Iraqi. I was born in Baghdad. And I kind of lent into my heritage with my story. I kind of used family stories with the global view as well, because it was my story was ostensibly about the Iraq War. But I used a lot of sort of personal family history and lent into that, really. And that, I think, helped to make it personal. And maybe that's what they responded to. I'm not sure, but you know, it's only an assumption.
Yeah, but there was more of a richness and a texture to it because it was coming from,
and a truth, you know.
Yeah.
If I had have written a TV script, I wouldn't have got in, so I submitted a theatre script, and I had researched it within an inch of its life. But I think because it was a one-person show, I knew that character inside out, and I had done the research. So I think maybe potentially the character was quite strong. I'm not sure about the plot, but I think character-wise, maybe that's potentially what it was.
Well, thank you. Brilliant advice there. Somebody's asking about the differences between Voices and Drama Room, and if Voices is more entry level than trying to get into Drama Room. So I know Finn and Amy, you've both done both of those programs recently. What from a writer's perspective, what do you think are the key differences between those two?
I mean, I think Voices has changed ever so slightly since I was on it, because it was a 3-month program when I did it, and I think that this year it will be a 6-month.
Yeah.
But when I was on Voices, so the main difference was that we didn't develop a script on Voices. We developed a pitch document and a treatment. So in many ways, much greater challenge for me, because I find those documents much harder to write than I do writing a script, and I think that's true for a lot of writers. So in a sense, I think there, you know, there is a sort of idea from the BBC, and Jess, correct me if I'm wrong, but that they want it to be in some ways a feeder program, that, you know, if you're doing Voices, then it's kind of part of your journey, working up to maybe them being on Drama Room, which is, you know, that's how I did it. I don't know if Finn, you did it the same way around, you did Voices and then Drama Room, but it's definitely a really key skill to be able to develop, to create convincing, compelling pitch documents and treatments. So I think it was an amazing grounding for then coming into Drama Room, because we then had to work on an outline for our pilot script, but it meant that in the back of my head I was always thinking, like, how can I make this into a series? And I had that basis of working out what the series might look like. So now, kind of going out with my spec, I've got a little bit better of an idea of where the series might go, which I don't think I necessarily would have done, or would have had that if I hadn't done Voices. So yes, I mean, I don't know how I define it exactly, but I think Voices was for me a sort of a feeder program, and it kind of, I felt like I graduated from one to the other in a sense. even though the application is totally separate for me. But I don't know if they are now. Is that
So
true?
it's Voices and Drama Room, scripted as it will be called, are both selected through the open call. So yes, we use that as a mechanism to select for both groups. That's great. Thank you. Somebody else is asking here, Anna, thank you for your question, asking if you have any tips on how to make the first 10 pages stand out. That's a hard question. Look, you've stumped them, Anna.
I think when I read other scripts, the inciting incident is so important. It's the thing that makes you go, oh my God, I'm going to keep reading this script. And I think sometimes people think that they have one and they don't, or they think the characters are interesting enough for the story to continue. And so I just think, think about the inciting incident and how you can raise the stakes. You know, are the stakes high enough in the first 10 pages? But it's hard kind of giving advice without knowing the story.
I think you never need as much setup as you think you need. You never ever need as much setup. You think people need to like be introduced to all of the intricacies of your character's daily life and everything, but you can get there so much more interestingly if you just arrive a bit later into your story. Just think about like, what will I actually lose if I cut these first 10 pages? And if it's nothing story-wise, then it's not worth it. Just go in later.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. I think we're all so used to watching television now that we're second guessing where the story's going anyway. So you can move so much quicker at the start than you think. So you can lose exactly what Amy said, a lot of that setup and, you know, character wakes up, character has breakfast, blah, blah, blah. It's kind of, no, you can go a lot quicker than you think, actually. So, you know, cut and be ruthless, probably.
Yeah, get us into the exciting stuff as early as possible, because people turn off. Like, people are brutal consumers of television at the moment, aren't they? You know, people giving things like 5 minutes and then switching over and starting something new. So yeah, you have to always have that in the back of your mind and just think about how you consume TV yourself as a viewer, I guess. And a sort of related question to this, you've all mentioned the importance of reading scripts and watching lots. Are there any scripts that you have read, maybe from the script library, that you've thought have a compelling opening 10 pages that people might want to have a look at? Any script recommendations?
I'm just reading that, well, funnily enough, talking about Jesse Armstrong, because we had the thingy with him at the Q&A last week. The Succession scripts are a great read. They're incredible. There's not a lot of scene setup and direction. There's a lot of stuff that he uses in parentheses with the characters. That's mindset stuff as well, and stuff that you don't know as a TV viewer. But once you read the script, you start to see things you didn't know that were already there in the script. So they're an incredible read, I would say, and it's already affected how I'm writing my scripts. And or whoever were the writers on those particular episodes, they move so quickly, and it's incredible when you read them how much information they get in such an incredible short amount of time. Really short scenes as well, but so much information is packed in, not even just in the dialogue, as I say, sometimes just in the parentheses of what the character's thinking as they deliver the line of dialogue. If you can get hold of them, I'd say that's a great read.
Check those out. I think they've all been published by Faber now, haven't they, all of those scripts?
Like the first one is 700 pages or something. It's mad. Yeah.
It's a lot of talking. Amy, Finn, any suggestions, anything you've read or?
Sorry.
No, Finn, you go.
Someone told me that Russell T Davies is the best in writing action lines. So I always look at A Very English Scandal. It's on it as well. Any kind of script by Russell T Davies, because I love dialogue and action lines I really struggle with. So I think he's really good at kind of setting the scene and doing it concisely.
Well, on the opposite side, I think it gets brought up as a lot as an example of a really compelling opening scene. But the Happy Valley scripts are on the script library, and that opening scene of episode 1 of season 1 is a masterclass in how to introduce a character in dialogue. With, pretty brief, pretty abrupt, and you straight away know exactly where you are.
Yeah, that is a masterclass. You know exactly where you are, sort of geographically, in terms of character. It sets the tone. Yeah, it is a brilliant opening there. Great. Well, thank you so much. We're out of time. I can't believe that's just flown by. So thank you so much to our brilliant panelists. Thanks for joining us and giving up your lunchtime for this webinar. Thanks to the audience today for all your great questions and your interest in the open call. I just want to take the opportunity to wish everybody lots and lots of luck with your submissions and preparing your scripts in the coming weeks. And I hope to meet and speak to some of you at the upcoming drop-in webinar sessions that we've got planned. So have a brilliant rest of the day and a wonderful, happy Halloween. Hope you get lots of sweets and treats, not tricks, later today. And yeah, thanks a million. Bye-bye.
Good luck, guys.
Good luck.